A lot of lifters can't decide whether or not they're power lifters or bodybuilders.
Everybody want to be a bodybuilder. Right. So nobody want to lift this heavy ass weight. I do it though.
The primary difference between bodybuilding and strength sports like powerlifting is timing. Bodybuilders have to show up on stage, they need to look good at a specific moment, but they don't need to perform in the same way. A bodybuilding performance isn't an athletic performance, it's a show, it's a pageant. More specifically, advanced strength training requires periodization to achieve its goals. Bodybuilding does not. So what's periodization? I'm going to give you a formal definition and then I'm going to unpack it because it's pretty long. Periodization is a method for employing sequential or phasic alterations in the workload, training focus, and training tasks contained within the microcycle, mesocycle, and annual training plan. The approach depends on the goals established for the specific training period. A periodized training plan that is properly designed provides a framework for appropriately sequencing training so that training tasks, content, and workloads are varied at a multitude of levels in a logical, phasic pattern in order to ensure the development of specific physiological and performance outcomes at predetermined time points. That's a lot of words. Let's break that down. There are three components we can really tease out. Periodization has a phasic approach, meaning that you do different things at different times. There's variation, and that you don't do the exact same thing all the time. And that it's goal-oriented, and you're trying to achieve a specific goal in a predetermined period of time at a specific moment. And if we look at this, we can see why periodization just doesn't really apply to bodybuilding. Bodybuilders have one goal: maximizing muscle growth. They're just trying to grow as much muscle as possible. And so because of this, there's no real reason to have a phasic approach in bodybuilding. Phase 1 would be building muscle. Phase 2 would be building muscle. You never have a phase where you try to build more muscle because you're always trying to build as much muscle as possible. There's no need to be phasic. However, let me caveat this. In enhanced bodybuilding, where performance-enhancing drugs are used, there is a phasic approach. But that's because drugs are in play, and you can't blast drugs all the time. And so in order to maintain health, this requires a cycling approach to the usage of drugs. So there is a phasic approach within bodybuilding, but it's not dictated by training, it's actually dictated by health. And yes, there can be overlap, of course, in the usage of performance-enhancing drugs and the training modality, but still the primary driver here is drugs and health and not training. Secondly, bodybuilding does have some variety, but for most trainees, this variety is totally random and not pre-planned at all. It's not designed to reach a specific outcome. In the best of circumstances, bodybuilders do use variety. They'll rotate movements to avoid plateaus. But this still doesn't compare to the kind of variety that's employed in strength training, where it's much more targeted and focused and geared towards achieving a specific outcome. Lastly, though bodybuilding is goal-oriented, like I said at the top, that goal isn't about peak performance. When bodybuilders step on stage, they're at their leanest, they're most depleted. Their performance, their athletic capabilities are actually at their lowest. So this is in complete contrast to the traditional strength athlete who's seeking to maximize performance on a specific date. And we don't need theory to prove this point. If you look at most successful bodybuilders, they mostly do the same stuff all the time. Ronnie Coleman did the exact same training routine throughout his entire career and just slowly got stronger and bigger over time. Now, of course, some athletes do benefit psychologically, mentally from a more periodized, structured approach. That can be totally valid, but it's not necessary to maximize muscle growth. Conversely, strength trainees must periodize their training if they want to maximize strength gains. For a more detailed, nuanced look at this topic, I've linked an article below by Greg Nuckols. It's really fascinating. Please check it out. Let's completely get out of the theoretical and look at a standard powerlifting program. I've picked the TSA Intermediate Program version 1. I really like this program because it's kind of basic. They actually have a more advanced version now. I'm choosing the old version because I think it's perfect for the strength trainee that's newer to more structured training. The TSA 9-week program is periodized. It has elements of linear periodization, and then as load goes up, the sets and reps tend to go down. It also has elements of undulating periodization, and then when you're performing the same exercise multiple times in a week, you do it in a different fashion with different reps and sets. It's based upon a 1 rep max. So you have to determine your 1 rep max or an estimated 1 rep max. You input that into the program, and then the weights are calculated based upon that 1 RM. It also incorporates RPE, rate of perceived exertion. This allows lifters to really understand their body, to categorically and systematically understand the effort they're expending and how those efforts yield results. It's a great program. I ran it years and years ago, and I often think about it and reference it now when I do my own programming for clients. Let's look at it together now so I can show you how these concepts play out in the real world. We'll begin with week 1. Week 1 is essentially an intro week. If you look at week 1 and week 2 and contrast, you'll see that week 1 has fewer sets. This is to allow the trainee to acclimate to the program and not to overwhelm themselves with fatigue and stress. As we also look from week 1 to week 2, you'll see that the load increases linearly. Sets and reps don't decrease. You're actually just working harder and adding more load. One thing I really like here is this column, this LSRPE, this last set RPE. This is something I still use in training with clients. Even when there's a predetermined weight and rep scheme, I ask the trainee to write down the last set rate of perceived exertion. This enables them to assess their performance after the set's been completed, and we can use that information to inform subsequent training cycles. The other thing I'll note here is that in addition to the primary movements of squat, bench, and deadlift, there's a ton of accessory work. This is really important for a well-balanced training program because you still need to develop the supporting musculature that will help to drive strength in those primary movements. And you'll notice here that they're training those accessory movements just with RPE. So again, this is a great learning tool. As we look at weeks 2 through 5, we see that there's a linear escalation. What I mean by that is that the weights increase, but the reps and sets stay the same. So what that means in practice is that the program is getting harder. That 5th week is likely to be the highest exertion week. And so if you look at the RPEs, for example, as we go through this, you might expect the RPEs to be lower in the first couple weeks, maybe RPE 6 and 7. And as we reach week 5, as fatigue is ascending and as the sets are getting harder, those RPEs might climb to RPE 9 or 10. And so then significantly, once we reach week 6, we see that there's kind of a deload. There's a bit of a taper. This will serve to alleviate the accumulated fatigue from the past weeks and will allow the athlete to begin to demonstrate the strength that they've been building throughout this training block. As the cycle progresses, as we get into week 7 and 8, we enter into a traditional peak. What this means is that intensity is rising, volume is decreasing. The athlete is getting more and more acclimated to heavier weights and more prepared to display athletic performance. Then, on week 9, the final week, athletes test. They try to hit a new 1 rep max in the 3 primary movements. This is their performance day. This is their meet day. This day is the culmination of this 9-week periodized cycle. In summation, we can see how the variables play out here. This 9-week cycle, though short, does have a phasic approach. The first 5 weeks serve as an accumulation period in which all we're doing is trying to generate more and more fatigue so as to prepare the body for the peak at the end. Then the last 4 weeks or the last 3 weeks is really that strength taper, where the emphasis is much more on neural control and demonstrating strength. Additionally, we can see that there's variety employed throughout. There's undulating rep ranges and different variations of the classic movements, such as a close grip bench press and a regular bench press. Lastly, of course, this program is very clearly goal-oriented. The purpose here is to drive 1 RM strength to make you fucking stronger. And the last week, you should be setting some PRs and getting stronger. I hope this exercise was interesting and informative for you. If you're a strength athlete, I recommend you check out this program, maybe even run it. If you're a bodybuilder, you might also benefit from running this program. Not necessarily because it'll make you jacked, although it will make you bigger, but because this way you'll be able to better understand the differences between strength training and bodybuilding. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this video useful, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. Appreciate you.